Many thanks for joining us in the newsroom on TV360 Nigeria. As Nigeria begins the second phase of the eased lockdown, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has been highlighting guidelines that will characterize the 4-week period. National Coordinator for the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Sani Aliyu, at a press conference in Abuja said one of the key highlights is the complete reopening of the financial sector. He also said the nationwide lockdown will now be between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., but noted that the ban on interstate travel will remain in place.
Hotels may reopen, but must observe all mandatory non-pharmaceutical interventions. Restaurants other than those in hotels must remain closed for eat-ins, but are allowed to prioritize and continue practicing the takeaway system. Bars, gyms, cinemas, and nightclubs are closed until further evaluation. We will continue to support the agricultural sector to ensure food security for our citizens, and in this regard, farmers are requested to please go ahead with their normal activities provided they observe all mandatory non-pharmaceutical interventions. Schools. All schools to remain closed until further evaluation. The Federal Ministry of Education is instructed to work with schools to start the process of preparing students that require exiting exams, i.e. certifying students, to allow them to take exams in the next phase, early in the next phase of the lifting of the lockdown. But for the moment, schools are to remain closed. I have already mentioned places of worship. Restricted opening will apply subject to the guidelines issued by the PTF as well as the protocols agreed by respective state governments working with religious leaders.
The federal government has directed operators of domestic flights to come up with protocols that will lead to the resumption of flights from June 21st. National Coordinator of the Task Force, Sani Aliyu, who announced this, said the aviation industry must develop protocols that will mandate airlines to ensure physical distancing by reducing passenger capacity and ensuring provision of sanitizers and personal protective equipment. The protocols, according to the PTF coordinator, must also include temperature checks at the point of entry and departure and reduction in the number of travelers or staff. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has confirmed 460 new COVID-19 cases in 19 states and the Federal Capital Territory. With the latest updates, the COVID-19 case toll for Lagos has exceeded 5,000 as the state recorded 192 new cases on Monday. According to the NCDC update, 12 deaths were recorded and the number of fatalities increased from 287 to 299, while recoveries rose from 3,007 to 3,122. A total of 10,578 cases have now been confirmed in 35 states and the FCT. We're going to break here and we'll be right back. Please stay with us. The Minister of State for Labour and Employment, Festus Keyamo, and Loretta Onoche, an aide to President Muhammadu Buhari, have reacted to the death of legendary reggae singer Majek Fashek, praying for the repose of his soul. Majek Fashek, also known as the Rainmaker, died after battling with cancer for nearly a year. He was 57 years old. Uzoma Omenka, his wife, his manager, confirmed the news of his death on the singer's Instagram page on Tuesday. Omenka said the singer died in New York, where he was receiving treatment, adding that the doctors advised that he should be moved closer to his family, which informed his move to New York, where his wife and 3 sons live. President Muhammadu Buhari is urging the Senate to consider and approve the nomination of Tella Adeniro Ramon for the appointment as Resident Electoral Commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in charge of Osun State. Buhari also submitted the name of James Chikia Kolo to the Senate as replacement for Daniel James Kolo, who he earlier nominated for appointment as a Commissioner of the Federal Character Commission, FCC, representing Kwara State. President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, read Buhari's letters of request on the floor of the Senate at plenary. Lawan referred the 2 requests to the relevant committees of the Senate for further legislative action. The House of Representatives has rejected a motion seeking to suspend implementation of the 7.5% Value-Added Tax Act in the interest of Nigerians owing to impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. In rejecting the motion, the lawmakers said since 2.5% increase in VAT was already an act of the National Assembly, which has been signed into law, it cannot be suspended by a motion. Chairman of the House Committee on Finance, James Faleke, had objected to the motion being moved and drew the attention of the House to the fact that since the issue contained in the motion reflects an existing law, it will be out of place to suspend it with just a motion. We'll take a break here and we'll be right back with business stories. Do stay with us.
In the last 3 years, we have built a multi-purpose center, which is the envy of all in our constituency. And I can tell you that the people who are living there are already enjoying it.
Guy, do you think what this man just said is true? See, I seriously doubt. I'm sure it's one of those that are silly lies.
And wait, do you know there's a way to find out if these things he's saying is true or not? This is the Construct app. It gives people like us a sure way to track implementation of constituency projects. It gives valid and verified information on location of projects, amounts allocated, amount funded, the level of job done, and even the profiles of concerned legislators. You and I can post directly on this app.
Are you serious?
This is the Go-To app if you want to know how our Commonwealth is being expanded by the government.
Wow. Let's even see if what this man said is true. Show me.
The Construct app is developed by Other People Nigeria with support from USAID and is available on both Google Play Store and Apple Store.
And it's true.
Of course, I told you.
James, I don't know. You need to answer your call. This. Hello?
Is this Mr. Peter? I'm calling from the NCDC. Your friend, Mr. James Okripocha, was brought in this morning and tested positive for the coronavirus. He mentioned that he had been in close contact with you.
God forbid bad thing.
Sir, I am not saying that you have the virus, but you have spent some time with him over the past 14 days and it is better if you self-isolate immediately.
I don't know any James at all. Even only James in the Bible that I know as a good Christian.
Sir, he showed us pictures.
Now, wow. If you have come in contact with someone who has tested positive for the coronavirus, self-isolating is key to protecting those around you. Remember, viruses don't move, people do. Stopping the spread is in your hands.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
Economic experts have condemned the decision of the Central Bank of Nigeria to retain its cash reserve ratio at 22.7% during the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting in Abuja. The Managing Director, Cowrie Assets Management Limited, Johnson Chukwu, says the decision by the Apex Bank had cut short the expectations on analysts and may have an effect on commercial banks. Chukwu made this assertion while speaking to TV360 Nigeria in an interview via Skype.
The basic reason is that the banks currently maintain a liquidity ratio of 30% and then a cash reserve ratio of 27.5%, summing up to about 57.5%. At the same time, the banks are required to maintain a loan-to-deposit ratio of 65%. So if the banks in the past couple of months have struggled to meet that loan-to-deposit ratio, they will actually be left with no headroom for further credit expansion unless you release their balances that are stabilizing with the central bank. Or in the alternative, we expect that the level of system liquidity will increase astronomically. But in the absence of any major increase in system liquidity, the only source or the most likely source of liquidity for the bank will be the cash reserve ratio. So I was expecting that the central bank will reduce the cash reserve ratio to free more liquidity, make more liquidity available to the bank so that the banks can expand their lending. I mean, the primary objective of the central bank is in reducing the monetary policy rate because they want to inject more liquidity into the system as well as reduce the lending rate. But if the banks don't have the liquidity, then they will not expand credit. And as you all know, there is already a disconnect between the monetary policy rate and lending rate. The monetary policy rate is no longer the determinant of the rate at which banks lend to credit customers. At best, what we will say that the monetary policy rate serve is to determine the standing lending rate and the standing deposit rate, which is currently at an asymmetric corridor of 200 basis points and 500 basis points. So aside from that, in terms of commercial credit and the credit market, I don't think the monetary policy rate is a major determinant of lending rate in the market today. So in that wise, I wouldn't think adjusting the monetary policy rate will have any material impact on the lending rate or the available credit in the market.
7 days after George Floyd's death, major cities across the U.S. are still reeling from violence-marred protests which have escalated over the past week. The protests began after a video showed Floyd being arrested in Minneapolis and a white police officer kneeling on his neck, even after he pleaded that he couldn't breathe. President Donald Trump had threatened to send in the military to quell growing civil unrest, saying he would deploy the army if cities and states had failed to control the protest. Meanwhile, an independent autopsy released by Floyd's family said the 46-year-old died of asphyxiation from sustained pressure and called it a homicide. The finding confirms the same conclusion of an autopsy from the county medical examiner, which also called the death a homicide. George Floyd's funeral is set to take place in his hometown, Houston, next week. And in sports, the president of the Nigeria Football Federation, NFF, Amaju Pinnick, says Gernot Rohr remains the best man for the Super Eagles and deserved to keep his job. Rohr signed a two-year deal with the Nigeria Football Federation last week, which will see him finish as the longest-serving coach in Super Eagles history by the end of his tenure in 2023. While speaking with journalists on social media chats on Monday, Pinnick said the Franco-German earned his new deal. Rohr, who's been in charge of the Super Eagles since August 2016, has been given a brief of leading Nigeria to qualification for the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar and chasing a fourth Africa Cup of Nations title win in 2021. And that's it at this time on the newsroom. Do join us at the next hour for more stories.